I'm 68 years old, and yesterday my son fired me from the company I built. From the $45 million business that I started in my garage 38 years ago, I was retired as CEO. But this morning I called my lawyer and activated a secret clause I put in place 38 years ago. The look on Marcus's face when he realizes what I've done will be priceless. My name is Harold Montgomery, but everyone calls me Hal. This is the story of how a technologically outdated old man taught his MBA son that experience beats education and wisdom trumps arrogance every single time. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. Trust me, you'll want to hear every word of this corporate revenge story. My name is Harold Montgomery, and I've been building things my entire life. Not just with my hands, though I started that way, but with my mind, my determination, and my willingness to work harder than anyone thought possible. In 1985, I was 30 years old, newly married to my wife Sarah, and working as a machine operator at Boeing. The job paid well enough, but I could see the writing on the wall. Automation was coming to manufacturing, and I wanted to be part of the solution, not the casualty. So I started Montgomery Industries in my garage. Sarah thought I was crazy, quitting a stable job to chase what she called pipe dreams about robots. But I could see the future coming, and I knew companies would need custom automation equipment to stay competitive. The first year, I made $8,000 in revenue. The second year, $31,000. By year 5, I was grossing over $500,000 annually and had moved into a real facility with 6 employees. Sarah stopped calling it a pipe dream and started calling it our future. Marcus was born in 1981, 4 years before I started the company. He grew up watching me work 16-hour days, missing Little League games to meet deadlines, choosing business growth over family vacations. I told myself I was building something for him, creating a legacy he could inherit and be proud of. "Daddy, why do you work so much?" he asked me once when he was 8 years old. I'd missed his school play because a client needed emergency repairs. "I'm building something special for our family, son. Someday you'll understand." Looking back now, I realize Marcus learned the wrong lessons from watching me. He saw the success, the growing bank account, the respect from employees and clients. But he never saw the nights I stayed awake worrying about payroll, the months I didn't take a salary to keep the company afloat, or the 1,000 small sacrifices that turned a garage operation into a multi-million-dollar business. By the time Marcus graduated high school in 1999, Montgomery Industries was generating $12 million in annual revenue. We employed 89 people, had contracts with major manufacturers across the Pacific Northwest, and I was being invited to speak at industry conferences about automation and innovation. "I want to study business," Marcus told me senior year, "get my MBA, learn modern management techniques, then I can help you take the company to the next level." I was proud. My son wanted to join the family business, bring his education to complement my experience. Harvard Business School accepted him for their MBA program, and I gladly wrote the tuition checks. $200,000 seemed like a small investment in our company's future. That was my first mistake. Marcus graduated from Harvard in 2003 with his MBA and ideas about how modern businesses should operate. He'd learned about corporate restructuring, efficiency optimization, and something he called generational leadership transition. "Dad, the business world has changed dramatically since you started the company," he explained during his first week back. "We need to implement contemporary management structures, digital integration, and strategic succession planning." The words sounded impressive, but I wasn't sure what they meant in practical terms. I'd built the company through relationships, hard work, and delivering quality products on time. Those fundamentals hadn't changed, regardless of what Harvard was teaching. Still, I wanted to include Marcus in leadership. I made him vice president of operations and gave him authority over day-to-day management while I focused on client relationships and strategic planning. Father and son working together to build something bigger than either of us could achieve alone. The problem started slowly. Marcus began implementing what he called efficiency improvements. Longer lunch breaks became, quote, employee wellness initiatives. The company Christmas party became a, quote, team-building investment. Small changes that individually seemed reasonable, but collectively felt like we were prioritizing style over substance. "Dad, you need to delegate more responsibility to the management team," Marcus would say during our weekly meetings. "Micromanaging every decision creates bottlenecks that impede organizational growth." but it wasn't micromanaging. It was caring about details that made the difference between satisfied clients and lost contracts. When you've built relationships over 20 years, you don't delegate them to someone who learned about client relations from a textbook. The real conflict emerged when Marcus married Victoria in 2008. She'd worked at McKinsey & Company, one of those consulting firms that charged companies millions to tell them how to run their own businesses. Victoria had opinions about everything, especially about how Montgomery Industries should be, quote, optimized for contemporary market conditions. "Harold, you've built something impressive," she told me during a family dinner that felt more like a business presentation. "But the company has reached a plateau that requires sophisticated strategic intervention." "We grew 12% last year," I replied. "Our profit margins are higher than industry average. What plateau?" "Growth rate deceleration, Harold. The company is successful, but it's not scaling efficiently. Marcus has identified multiple optimization opportunities that could double revenue within 3 years." Double revenue sounded appealing, but Victoria's plans involved debt financing, rapid expansion, and what she called leveraging operational synergies. In plain English, borrowing millions to grow faster than our clients could support, then hoping market conditions stayed favorable long enough to pay back the loans. I'd seen companies try that strategy during the dot-com boom. Most of them crashed when economic conditions shifted. Montgomery Industries had survived 3 recessions by staying financially conservative, maintaining strong client relationships, and never borrowing more than we could afford to lose. "I appreciate the analysis," I told them, "but we're going to continue growing sustainably." Marcus's disappointment was obvious. "Dad, you're thinking like a small business owner. We have the opportunity to become a major player in industrial automation. Don't you want to build something bigger?" I wanted to build something that would last. But saying that made me sound like I lacked ambition, like I was satisfied with mediocrity. Marcus and Victoria had a way of making prudence seem like cowardice, experience seem like obsolescence. The dynamic continued for years. Marcus pushed for aggressive expansion. I advocated for steady growth. He wanted to implement cutting-edge management methodologies. I preferred systems that had proven effective. Victoria provided research and analysis supporting every one of Marcus's proposals, while I relied on instinct and experience. "Harold, data-driven decision-making is essential in contemporary business environments," Victoria would say whenever I questioned their recommendations. "Intuition-based management was effective in previous decades, but modern markets require analytical sophistication." By 2015, our disagreements had become routine. Marcus controlled operations, I controlled strategy and client relationships. He ran the company day to day. I made final decisions on major contracts and financial commitments. It was an uncomfortable balance, but it worked. Then Sarah died. Sarah's cancer diagnosis came in January 2018. Stage 3, aggressive treatment recommended, unclear prognosis. She fought for 18 months with the same determination she'd shown when I started the company in our garage. But cancer doesn't respect determination or love, or the plans you've made for growing old together. She passed away in July 2019, leaving me alone at 65 with a successful business and an aching emptiness that success couldn't fill. Marcus and Victoria were supportive during Sarah's illness and funeral. They helped with arrangements, managed company operations while I focused on my wife's care, and gave me space to grieve without pressuring me about business decisions. "Dad, take whatever time you need," Marcus said at the funeral. "The company will be here when you're ready to fully engage again." For 6 months, I appreciated their support. Marcus handled day-to-day operations competently while I processed my loss and rediscovered my motivation for work. The company continued growing, clients remained satisfied, and employees adapted to Marcus's management style. The grief made me vulnerable in ways I didn't recognize at the time. I became more willing to defer to Marcus's judgment, less interested in battles over management philosophy. When he proposed changes, I often agreed just to avoid conflict. I wanted family harmony more than business control. "Dad, we should formalize succession planning," Marcus suggested in early 2020. "You're 66 now, approaching retirement age. We need to establish clear leadership transition procedures." The conversation made sense. I wasn't getting younger, and eventually Marcus would need to run Montgomery Industries independently. Better to plan the transition carefully than leave important decisions to chance. "What did you have in mind?" "Executive leadership development." I take increasing responsibility for strategic decisions while you maintain oversight and client relationships. Gradual transition over 3 to 5 years, culminating in full leadership transfer when you're ready to retire. It sounded reasonable. Marcus had been with the company for 17 years, understood our operations, and deserved the opportunity to prove his leadership capabilities. I agreed to begin transitioning more authority to him while retaining final approval on major decisions. That was my second mistake. The changes began subtly. Marcus started making decisions without consulting me first, then informing me afterward. Small things initially: vendor selections, hiring choices, policy updates, changes that individually seemed within his authority as operations leader. Just keeping you informed, Dad, trying to reduce the decision bottlenecks we discussed. But the changes accelerated. Marcus began representing himself as CEO in client meetings, referring to me as company founder rather than current leadership. He started talking about my vision for the company and the strategic direction I'm implementing. Marcus, I'm still CEO, I reminded him during one of our weekly meetings. Succession planning doesn't mean I've retired. Of course not, Dad. I'm just trying to establish leadership credibility with clients and employees. Transition requires confidence in future management. Victoria supported every change with research and analysis. Harold, successful succession requires gradual authority transfer. Marcus needs operational autonomy to develop leadership skills. They had an answer for every concern, a business school explanation for every power grab. I began to feel like I was arguing against my son's professional development rather than protecting my own authority. The real warning sign came in late 2020 when Marcus proposed restructuring the executive compensation package. What kind of restructuring? Contemporary CEO compensation models based on company performance metrics, salary plus equity participation plus performance bonuses aligned with growth targets. The proposal would have given Marcus a base salary 40% higher than what I was paying myself, plus stock options that could be worth millions if the company's value increased. Meanwhile, my compensation would become advisory fees for strategic consultation services. Marcus, you're not the CEO yet. I'm performing CEO functions, Dad. The compensation should reflect actual responsibilities. I rejected the proposal, but the fact that he'd made it revealed his thinking. Marcus wasn't planning to gradually inherit leadership, he was planning to take it. The confrontation came in March 2021. Marcus called a family meeting to discuss finalizing succession timeline and leadership transition procedures. Dad, I've been effectively running the company for 2 years. It's time to make the arrangement official. What arrangement? My promotion to CEO. Your transition to Chairman Emeritus. A clean leadership change that provides stability for employees and clients. Victoria had prepared a presentation outlining the benefits of immediate leadership transition, market conditions, operational efficiency, competitive positioning. Every argument supported Marcus taking control now rather than waiting for my retirement. I'm not ready to retire, I said simply. Dad, you're 67 years old. You've been working for 40 years. Don't you want to enjoy retirement while you're still healthy enough to travel and pursue hobbies? What I wanted was to continue leading the company I'd built until I decided to stop. But saying that made me sound like I was clinging to power out of ego rather than protecting the business I'd spent my life creating. Give me time to think about it. How much time we need to make this transition before the next fiscal year? 6 months. They were giving me 6 months to decide whether to surrender control of my life's work or face some unspecified consequences for refusing. I spent those 6 months watching Marcus operate with increasing independence. He made major decisions without consulting me, signed contracts in his own name, and began referring to himself as CEO in industry publications. When I objected, he reminded me that we were in transition and he was preparing for leadership responsibilities. By September 2021, Marcus wasn't asking for permission anymore. He was informing me of decisions after they'd been implemented. The succession planning had become a gradual coup, executed so smoothly that opposing it made me look like I was sabotaging my own son's career. Dad, we need to finalize this transition, Marcus said in October. The uncertainty is affecting employee morale and client confidence. What affected my confidence was realizing that my son had been maneuvering to push me out of my own company for 2 years. What if I'm not ready to retire? Marcus and Victoria exchanged glances. Then we'll need to explore other options for resolving this leadership ambiguity. Other options. The phrase felt like a threat. The board meeting was scheduled for November 15, 2021. Marcus had expanded the board over the previous year, adding 2 outside directors who specialized in, quote, corporate governance and succession planning. Both had impressive consulting backgrounds and no history with Montgomery Industries. We need independent expertise to guide this transition, Marcus had explained when proposing the additions. Outside perspectives help ensure objectivity in family business decisions. I should have realized that outside directors with no loyalty to me would support whatever leadership change Marcus proposed. But grief and wishful thinking had made me naive about my son's political maneuvering. The meeting began with Marcus presenting a comprehensive analysis of leadership effectiveness and strategic vision alignment. He'd prepared charts showing company performance metrics, client satisfaction scores, and employee engagement surveys. The data clearly indicates that contemporary leadership approaches are generating superior outcomes, he explained to the board. Traditional management methodologies, while historically effective, are no longer optimal for current market conditions. Every chart supported the same conclusion. Marcus's management was more effective than mine. When I questioned the methodology, Victoria provided detailed explanations of their analytical framework and data collection procedures. They'd spent months building a case for why I should be replaced. Harold, we appreciate the foundation you've established, said one of the outside directors. But succession planning requires objective evaluation of leadership effectiveness, not emotional attachment to historical arrangements. The vote was unanimous. Effective immediately, Marcus would become CEO of Montgomery Industries. I would retain the title of Chairman Emeritus with advisory responsibilities and a reduced compensation package reflecting my new role. This transition will provide operational stability while honoring your legacy as company founder, Marcus said after the vote. You'll remain involved in strategic consultation, but day-to-day management will be my responsibility. I sat in the conference room where I'd held thousands of meetings over 36 years, listening to my son explain how my life's work would be better managed without me. The outside directors discussed implementation timelines and communication strategies for announcing the leadership change to employees and clients. Are there any questions about the transition process? Marcus asked. I had many questions, but none that would change what had just happened. My son had engineered a corporate coup so sophisticated that it looked like natural succession planning. He'd used my grief, my trust, and my love for family against me to steal the company I'd built. No questions, I said quietly. The meeting ended with handshakes and congratulations for Marcus on his promotion. The outside directors praised the smooth transition and strategic vision that would guide Montgomery Industries into its next phase of growth. I drove home to the empty house I'd shared with Sarah, thinking about 38 years of 16-hour days, missed family events, and financial sacrifices that had built something I was no longer allowed to control. That evening, I made a phone call I should have made months earlier. Harold, it's been too long, said David Chen, the attorney who'd helped me incorporate Montgomery Industries in 1985. I heard about Sarah. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you, David. I need to ask you about something we discussed many years ago, the Founder Protection Clause. David's pause lasted several seconds. Harold, are you saying what I think you're saying? Marcus forced me out today. Board vote. I'm Chairman Emeritus with advisory responsibilities. Jesus, after everything you built, how did he manage that? I explained the gradual takeover, the outside directors, the data analysis that supposedly proved Marcus was a more effective leader than me. David listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. Harold, do you want to activate the poison pill clause? The poison pill. We'd called it that because it would be deadly to anyone who tried to remove me involuntarily from the company. A legal mechanism David had suggested in 1985 to protect founders from future boardroom coups. Explain it to me again, it's been 38 years. If you're removed as CEO without your voluntary consent, several things happen automatically. First, your founder's shares convert to super voting shares with 10-to-1 voting power. Second, you receive additional shares equal to 25% of outstanding equity. Third, all company assets revert to founder control pending shareholder resolution. The mechanism was designed to make hostile takeovers impossible by ensuring the founder retained ultimate control even if removed from day-to-day management. Marcus and Victoria had been so focused on board politics that they'd never examined the original incorporation documents. What would that mean practically? You'd control approximately 60% of voting power and have legal authority to reverse any decisions made by the current board, including Marcus's appointment as CEO. And Marcus would discover that corporate coups require understanding corporate law, which apparently Harvard Business School doesn't teach as thoroughly as they should. I thought about Marcus presenting his charts and graphs, explaining to the board how contemporary leadership was superior to traditional management. He'd been so confident in his analytical approach, so certain that business school methodology could overcome 38 years of experience. David, let's activate the poison pill. Harold, once we do this, there's no going back. Your relationship with Marcus will never recover. It's already destroyed. He chose corporate ambition over family loyalty. Now he gets to learn why that was a mistake. I'll file the paperwork tomorrow morning. By noon, you'll be back in control of Montgomery Industries. That night, I sat in my study looking at photographs of the company's early years. Sarah and me at the first trade show in 1987. Marcus at age 10, visiting the factory floor. The grand opening of our current facility in 1995. I'd built Montgomery Industries to create something lasting, something Marcus could inherit and be proud of. Instead, he'd seen it as something to be taken rather than earned. The poison pill would teach him the difference. I arrived at Montgomery Industries at 8 a.m. the next morning, just like I had for 38 years. Marcus's BMW was already in the parking space marked CEO, the same space where I'd parked since we moved to this facility in 1995. The receptionist looked uncomfortable when I walked through the lobby. "Good morning, Mr. Montgomery. I'm not sure. With the new arrangements." "Good morning, Linda. Is Marcus in his office?" "Yes, sir, but he's in a meeting with the new directors about reorganization planning." Perfect timing. I walked through the corridors where photos of company milestones lined the walls. Groundbreaking ceremonies, contract signings, employee celebrations, 38 years of memories that Marcus was already planning to modernize. Marcus's office, my former office, had been redecorated. Contemporary furniture, abstract art, everything designed to signal that new leadership brought sophisticated sensibilities. The photographs of company history had been replaced with charts showing projected growth trajectories. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Marcus looked up from a conference table where he sat with Victoria and the outside directors. "I thought we discussed your new role. Advisory consultation doesn't require daily office presence." I handed him the legal documents David had prepared. "These require your immediate attention." Marcus scanned the first page, his confident expression gradually shifting to confusion. "What is this?" "Founder Protection Clause activation. Effective immediately." Victoria leaned over to read the documents. Her face went pale as she processed the legal language. "This can't be legitimate." "There are no supervoting shares in the corporate structure." "There are now," I said calmly. "The original incorporation documents included provisions for founder protection against involuntary removal. Since yesterday's board meeting constituted such removal, the provisions are now active." One of the outside directors stood up. "Harold, this is clearly some kind of legal manipulation. We followed proper corporate governance procedures." "You followed procedures you understood. You didn't examine the original corporate charter, which includes mechanisms specifically designed to prevent what you attempted yesterday." Marcus was still reading, his face growing redder with each paragraph. "This says you now control 60% of voting power and have authority to reverse all board decisions." "That's correct. That's impossible. You can't just create shares out of nothing. I didn't create them. They were written into the incorporation documents 38 years ago as protection against exactly this situation." Victoria grabbed her phone and began frantically texting, probably contacting McKinsey colleagues who might understand corporate law better than she did. The outside directors exchanged worried glances, realizing they'd just participated in a coup that was about to be reversed by superior legal maneuvering. "Dad, this is ridiculous. You're using technicalities to overturn legitimate corporate governance." "I'm using the legal protections I established when I founded this company to prevent my son from stealing it through manipulative board politics." Marcus slammed the documents onto the conference table. "I didn't steal anything. I earned leadership through performance and strategic vision." You earned it through manipulating grief-stricken father who trusted you to act with integrity. The conference room fell silent. Victoria's phone buzzed with responses to her urgent messages. The outside directors began gathering their materials, probably calculating how quickly they could distance themselves from a corporate governance disaster. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, his voice smaller than it had been minutes earlier. "Now you learn what consequences look like." The emergency board meeting convened at 2 p.m. Marcus sat at the conference table looking like he'd aged 5 years in 6 hours. Victoria's McKinsey colleagues had confirmed that the poison pill clause was legally valid and automatically enforceable upon founder removal. "This mechanism is actually quite sophisticated," one of the outside directors admitted. Corporate law in 1985 included several provisions that aren't commonly used in contemporary incorporation documents. David Chen attended the meeting as my legal counsel, bringing copies of the original corporate charter and 38 years of documentation supporting founder protection rights. "Gentlemen, the legal situation is straightforward," David explained. "Mr. Harold Montgomery retains controlling interest in Montgomery Industries regardless of board composition or management appointments. Yesterday's CEO appointment is therefore void." "What does that mean for current operations?" asked the other outside director. "It means Marcus is no longer CEO," I said simply. "All decisions made under his authority since yesterday are subject to founder review and potential reversal." Marcus looked desperately at Victoria, who was still processing messages from her consulting network. "There has to be some legal remedy, some way to challenge this." "You can challenge the original incorporation documents in court," David replied, "but that would require proving that provisions written in 1985 are somehow invalid despite 38 years of corporate compliance. Good luck with that." The vote to restore me as CEO was unanimous. The outside directors, faced with potential legal liability for participating in an invalid corporate action, quickly aligned themselves with whoever held actual control. "Harold, we apologize for any misunderstanding about corporate governance procedures," one of them said. "We relied on representations about board authority that appear to have been incomplete." Marcus said nothing during the vote. Victoria was too busy texting to pay attention to the proceedings. The sophisticated corporate takeover they'd planned for 2 years had collapsed in 6 hours because they'd never bothered to read the foundational legal documents. After the meeting, Marcus followed me to my restored office. "Dad, we need to talk about this." "We're talking." "This whole poison pill thing, it feels like cheating." "Cheating? You spent 2 years manipulating me into surrendering control of my company. You used my grief over your mother's death to engineer a corporate coup, and you think I'm cheating?" Marcus sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. The same chair where he'd sat as a child when visiting the office, asking questions about manufacturing and dreaming about joining the family business. "I thought I was helping modernize the company, bringing contemporary management to outdated systems. You thought you could do my job better than me despite having 0 experience building a business from nothing. I have an MBA from Harvard. I have 38 years of experience building this specific company. Which qualification do you think matters more for running Montgomery Industries?" Marcus looked around the office that had been his for less than 24 hours. "What happens to me now?" "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you've learned anything from this experience." The conversation lasted 2 hours. Marcus explained his frustration with what he saw as my resistance to change and innovation. I explained the difference between change that improves business performance and change that simply demonstrates business school education. "Dad, I want to contribute meaningfully to the company's success, but I need to feel like my ideas and expertise are valued." "Your ideas will be valued when they're based on understanding our business rather than impressing people with management theory." We reached an agreement. Marcus would return to his previous role as Vice President of Operations, with specific performance metrics and accountability measures. No more gradual authority increases, no more succession planning discussions, until he proved he could lead effectively at his current level. "And Marcus, if you ever attempt another corporate coup, the poison pill clause includes provisions for permanent removal of family members who act against founder interests." His face went pale. "You'd fire your own son?" "I'd fire anyone who tried to steal my company. Family relationships don't override business integrity." 6 months later, Montgomery Industries was performing better than it had in years. Marcus had channeled his ambition into improving operations rather than acquiring power. Victoria had found a consulting position that utilized her skills without threatening my authority. The outside directors had resigned, citing schedule conflicts that sounded more like liability concerns. "Dad, I owe you an apology," Marcus said during one of our weekly management meetings. "I got so focused on proving myself that I forgot you built this company through competence, not politics. What changed your perspective? Running operations for 6 months without trying to undermine your leadership. When I focused on actually improving performance, instead of positioning for promotion, I learned things they don't teach at Harvard. Such as that building relationships takes years, but destroying them takes minutes. That experience matters more than education. That earning respect is harder than demanding it." The poison pill clause remained active, a permanent reminder that founder protection exists for good reasons. Marcus now understood that inheriting a business meant earning the right to lead it, not simply waiting for biological succession. "Will you ever trust me enough to discuss succession planning again?" he asked. "When you stop thinking about succession as a promotion you deserve, and start thinking about it as a responsibility you've earned. How will I know when I've earned it? When you care more about the company's future than your own advancement. When you understand that leadership means serving others rather than being served by them." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "That could take years." "It should take years. Anything worth inheriting is worth earning properly." The relationship between father and son, between founder and heir, slowly began healing. Not back to what it had been before the coup attempt, but forward to something more honest and sustainable. Marcus learned to lead through competence rather than manipulation. I learned to delegate authority without surrendering control. Together, we began building something neither of us could have achieved independently. A family business based on mutual respect rather than assumed inheritance. The poison pill clause remained in the corporate charter, a legal safeguard against future attempts to steal what takes decades to build. But more importantly, it served as a reminder that some things, trust, respect, integrity, can't be acquired through corporate maneuvering. They have to be earned. 18 months after the poison pill activation, Marcus had rebuilt my trust enough that I was considering real succession discussions. His performance had been exemplary, his attitude transformed, and his leadership genuine rather than manipulative. Then Victoria called. "Harold, I need to speak with you privately," she said, her voice carrying an urgency I hadn't heard since the coup attempt. "It's about Marcus, and it's serious." We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from the office and family. Victoria looked older than her 38 years, stress lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 2 years ago. "He's been contacted by Hartwell Industries," she said without preamble. "They want to acquire Montgomery Industries for $58 million. Marcus would become their regional director with a $3 million contract." Hartwell Industries, our biggest competitor, trying to buy out smaller automation companies for years. I'd turned down their offers 3 times over the past decade. Has he accepted? Not yet. But Harold, he's seriously considering it. They're pressuring him for a decision by month's end. For 18 months, Marcus had played the reformed son perfectly. But when real money appeared, his true priorities revealed themselves. That evening I tested him. Over dinner at the country club, I presented a hypothetical scenario about a $60 million acquisition offer. "Hypothetically," Marcus said, choosing his words carefully, "if the terms were favorable and the acquiring company had good intentions, it might be worth serious consideration." The corporate speak was back. Marcus hadn't changed at all. He'd simply learned to perform reform more convincingly. The next morning, I called an emergency board meeting. Marcus arrived looking confident, probably expecting me to announce accelerated succession planning. "Marcus, have you been contacted by Hartwell Industries regarding a potential acquisition?" The color drained from his face. "Dad, how did you—" "According to my information, you've had 3 meetings with their acquisition team and requested detailed financial projections for a $58 million purchase offer." Marcus slumped in his chair like a man watching his future collapse. "How could you possibly know that?" I opened the folder David Chen had prepared. These documents formalize several important changes to Montgomery Industries' corporate structure. First, the poison pill clause now includes permanent provisions preventing any family member who attempts unauthorized asset sales from future succession consideration. Second, violation of these provisions results in immediate removal from all company positions. You can't do this. For 18 months, Marcus had played the reformed son perfectly. But when real money appeared, his true priorities revealed themselves. That evening, I tested him. Over dinner at the country club, I presented a hypothetical scenario about a $60 million acquisition offer. Hypothetically, Marcus said, choosing his words carefully, if the terms were favorable and the acquiring company had good intentions, it might be worth serious consideration. The corporate speak was back. Marcus hadn't changed at all. He'd simply learned to perform reform more convincingly. The next morning, I called an emergency board meeting. Marcus arrived looking confident, probably expecting me to announce accelerated succession planning. "Marcus, have you been contacted by Hartwell Industries regarding a potential acquisition?" The color drained from his face. "Dad, how did you—" "According to my information, you've had 3 meetings with their acquisition team and requested detailed financial projections for a $58 million purchase offer." Marcus slumped in his chair like a man watching his future collapse. "How could you possibly know that?" I opened the folder David Chen had prepared. These documents formalize several important changes to Montgomery Industries' corporate structure. First, the poison pill clause now includes permanent provisions preventing any family member who attempts unauthorized asset sales from future succession consideration. Second, violation of these provisions results in immediate removal from all company positions. You can't do this. I can do exactly this. The poison pill clause grants me unilateral authority over corporate governance decisions, specifically to prevent the kinds of betrayals you've now attempted twice. Marcus looked desperately around the conference room for support that didn't exist. "Dad, please. The Hartwell offer is real money, $58 million. "Marcus, let me explain something about money that Harvard Business School apparently doesn't teach. Money you earn by destroying something valuable is worthless. Money you accept by betraying people who trust you is toxic." The vote was unanimous. Marcus sat motionless as his second attempt to steal my life's work collapsed around him. "What happens to me now?" he asked quietly. "You have 2 choices. Resign today with a generous severance package, or remain as a junior operations manager with no succession prospects and permanent oversight." "Those aren't real choices. They're the only choices you've earned." Marcus looked at me with something approaching hatred. "You'll never retire. You'll never let anyone else run this company. It'll die with you." "Maybe it will, but it won't die because my son sold it to competitors for personal profit." That afternoon, Marcus submitted his resignation. No emotional goodbye, no final attempt at reconciliation, just a formal letter stating his intention to pursue other opportunities. Hartwell Industries announced the following week that they'd hired Marcus Montgomery as regional director of their automation division. They didn't mention that his extensive experience included 2 failed attempts to steal the company his father built. 12 months later, Victoria called with urgent news. "Harold, Marcus has been secretly meeting with Hartwell Industries. They're offering $58 million to acquire Montgomery Industries, and Marcus would get a $3 million contract as their regional director." I'd turned down Hartwell's offers 3 times over the years. Now my own son was planning to sell them the company behind my back. That evening I tested Marcus over dinner. "Hypothetically, what would you do if a competitor offered $60 million for the company?" "Hypothetically," he said carefully, "if the terms were favorable, it might be worth serious consideration." The corporate speak was back. Marcus hadn't changed. He'd just learned to hide his greed better. The next morning, I confronted him at an emergency board meeting. "Marcus, have you been meeting with Hartwell Industries about selling my company?" His face went white. "Dad, how did you—" "You've had 3 meetings with them. $58 million. Your answer?" I handed him new legal documents. "The poison pill clause now permanently prevents any family member who attempts unauthorized asset sales from future succession. Violation results in immediate termination." "You can't do this." "I just did. The vote is unanimous." Marcus looked around desperately for support that didn't exist. "The Hartwell offer is real money, Dad. $58 million. Money earned by betraying trust is worthless, Marcus. Money from selling your integrity costs more than you can afford. What happens to me now? Resign today with severance, or stay as a junior manager with no advancement prospects. Your choice." Marcus gathered his things, hatred burning in his eyes. This company will die with you. Better it dies with me than because of you. That afternoon, Marcus resigned. Within a week, Hartwell Industries announced they'd hired him as regional director. They didn't mention his extensive experience included 2 failed attempts to steal his father's company. 3 years later, Montgomery Industries thrives under my leadership, with over $50 million in annual revenue. Marcus's career at Hartwell lasted barely a year before they eliminated his position. He's bounced between companies since, never building anything lasting. Last month, I received his first letter in 2 years. Dad, I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. I thought success meant taking shortcuts. I never learned that real success means building something worth keeping. I know I destroyed our relationship, but I wanted you to know that I finally get it. I filed the letter away without responding. Some lessons come too late to matter. Montgomery Industries will continue after I'm gone, but not as a family business. I've established an employee ownership trust that transfers control to the people who actually built this company. The poison pill clause remains active, protecting them from corporate raiders. Marcus learned the hard way that you can't inherit respect. You have to earn it. That shortcuts to success lead to permanent failure. That family loyalty flows both ways, or not at all. The most valuable legacy isn't money or property. It's understanding that integrity matters more than opportunity, that character matters more than cleverness, and that earning something always matters more than taking it. Montgomery Industries will outlive me because it's built on those principles. That's a legacy worth protecting. If you like this story, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, respect isn't inherited, it's earned through character.